We are live. Good afternoon, everybody. I don't do sessions at 2 o'clock very often, Catherine. Oh, actually, I should tell you, we are live on YouTube as well. This is the first time
Ooh.
I've ever been live on YouTube. I realized I could connect the YouTube to the same stream. So we're doing YouTube and LinkedIn. So
I'm very honored. I'm very honored to be the first one live on YouTube with you.
yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad it's you. It could be anybody, but it's you. So
That's very kind.
no, it's good. Be good, and a good topic to start with for YouTube. YouTube anyway,
Absolutely.
and also it's going to save me a hell of a lot of time uploading it afterwards. So, but I think it now tells me who's watching on YouTube.
Ooh.
I don't normally get told that on LinkedIn, but if you are here on LinkedIn, hello. Thank you for joining us. If you are here, please say hello. The more people we get adding and getting involved in this conversation, the better the conversation normally goes. But now I know I'm on 2, I will make sure I'll try and share the question so people can see it if they're watching on YouTube as well. But it's going to be a really great conversation about kind of what makes work meaningful. Probably look a little bit about values and purpose and all that kind of stuff. But I actually haven't got a clue where Catherine's going to go with this. And so I'm just as excited and intrigued as you are. So yeah. Catherine, are you ready?
Yes, let's do it. I'm excited.
Perfect. As I said, look, if you have questions for Catherine throughout this, please jump in the comments, ask away, because you will probably have better questions than me because you are living those situations. Whereas where I experience it from a coaching standpoint. So please, get involved. Catherine, look, rather than me butchering your introduction, I'm going to throw the mic over to you and allow you to butcher it instead. So, look, I'm going to shut up. Catherine, introduce yourself for everybody.
Thank you. Such joy to be here, Rich, and also because to the audience, Rich and I have known each other for quite a few years now. So this is very exciting. The first time we've kind of come together to do this. My name is Catherine Ritchie. I am a senior wellbeing and experience leader. I've worked across lots of different kind of industries, from energy tech, fintech, now in the legal sector. I'm also a clarity coach, so I enable aspiring leaders to find clarity and confidence in their careers. So I've got a really nice and a spectrum view of what work is from an employer perspective, but also from people who are employees of organizations. And that is the sweet spot I love to live in. My vocational purpose is definitely right in the middle there between what is work, what does it mean? So I think, there's so many things we could talk about in today's session. So I'm excited to hear the questions that people in the audience have got, but get into the nitty gritty with you, Rich.
Yeah. And I think let's start with kind of the work, because the coaching's new. So the work you do, I hope that's not degrading the coaching you do, but the work you do. What does that look like for you at the moment? There's a lot of change, a lot of things happening in the world right now. How is that impacting you?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of change across every organization at the moment. So the work or the day job, as I call it, because at this stage I have 2 jobs, but the day job when I'm looking after workplace wellbeing strategies and kind of the experience side of that, I think the changes that we're seeing across the board, not just in the organization I work in, but also, in similar organizations and all the workplace market is changing. And I think that's really primarily being driven by kind of a shift in attitudes, economic climate, geopolitical challenges, but also AI is driving a lot of that change as well. And I recently gave a keynote on the role of AI in that, what's shifting in our workplaces, and the kind of the main theme that I was really talking about, and a lot of the questions as well from the audience was around, what is the role of that and what is it changing? And predominantly, and what I was sharing with the audience, is that shift from IQ to EQ. What is human value in an organization? Now, that is kind of a part of what makes work meaningful. Maybe we'll come on to that. But I think that, huge shift and change is being pushed by what is work now, because the IQ element of our, human knowledge cannot be totally replaced by AI, but the rate at which AI and large language models are learning that content and learning that knowledge and able to deliver it faster than human beings, what do we add? What's left after that? And I think that it's the human nuance and element that AI will never be able to replace, but we need to look more closely now at the EQ element. Now that the IQ is being, again, greatly supported by AI, what is the role of EQ and the shift to that? And are we equipped for that shift? And also, what does that look like? So that's the kind of questions I think that are driving a lot of the shift in the workplace landscapes at the moment. I'd say that's probably the main thing that's top of mind when people ask me that question.
Yeah, I see. I went to a keynote. I went to an event before I went away, so 3 weeks ago, about like the future of work and AI. A lot of questions are asked. What does that look like? Not only for people within the kind of HR space, but just for people in general, and what skills are they going to need going forward? How is AI going to shift what they do, and the skills that they're going to need, etc., etc. So I think it's an interesting thing. And I'm excited to see, as coaches, how we're going to be able to support that as well.
Absolutely. And I think there is a real rise in the value of things like coaching, because it is not the coaching as a practice itself enables people to analyze those things, work through those things, that inner dialogue that you've got with yourself, but also people who are training as coaches are also developing their understanding of the psychology behind these things, and also how to ask a great question or how to have a meaningful conversation with somebody. So I think from both sides, coaching is absolutely something that is coming up as a more people in those roles, but also more organizations introducing that as a business function. There are organizations, particularly large consulting firms, that have had coaching departments for some time, but I'm seeing it definitely seeing it pop up now across many different types of organizations.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just going to go back to that AI thing, because I think I don't know what your thoughts are, but I think we are very, the narrative at the moment is scared of AI in the future. It was interesting. There was somebody, which is the thing which really kind of sits with me and sat with me afterwards, is like, yes, that's one frame to look at it. But there's another frame of the opportunity side of things. There's an exciting opportunity here to be involved in something different. But then the example was when we think about like the revolutions of our careers, when we went from the kind of manufacturing into the computers, and how many opportunities that created. So what's this going to create for us?
Yeah, I think more than anything, like you've just described, it's a change, and change is hard. And I think that there is the technology change, which is almost the first wave of change, is how do we bring this technology into our organizations? How do we bring this into my day-to-day life? Like, how do I use Copilot or ChatGPT in my daily life? But it's also the human change curve that comes behind that. It's sort of like, what do we need to do? And what do we need to help our organizations with? What kind of conversations do we need to be having to integrate this without creating that sense of fear? I think it's like any change curve there. We are all going through the motions of bringing this in, adapting to working with these things, and then understanding what happens after that. What is work? That is in a period of transition. But like you said, I'm thinking about it certainly through the lens of like when the computer was invented. There was lots of people who were handwriting things whose job wasn't to do that anymore. But the opportunity was, let's learn how to use computers. And it's the same sort of industrial revolution almost of like, this is just what it is in 2026.
Yeah. And I think we're going to have to be even more change ready, because the way the speed of AI is going to look. Absolutely. We've taken a huge detour already, Catherine. This isn't an AI conversation, but I like the conversation where it's going already. And look, our friends joined here. I don't know whether you can see this in the comments. Ryan saying hello to both of us.
Hello, Ryan. So glad you're here.
Look, as you said, like you are doing two jobs at once. How are you balancing that? Like being in the legal space is a lot. So how are you managing work-life balance and those demands?
I think you have a certain advantage if you've spent your whole career talking about well-being and healthy boundaries and how you manage your energy. And don't get me wrong, it's a challenge. And every day is different. But I think, I had a lot of that kind of knowledge of like, okay, well, how am I going to manage this? And in classic fashion for me, was like, let's take the first step and find out what that feels like. And I was very fortunate that when I opened out on LinkedIn to say I was taking new clients and I'm working my way through achieving my EMCC accreditation and ICF certification, I my full-time job, which, as you know, can be, it's definitely a demanding sector to work in, for sure. There is a lot of changing parts, moving things, particularly when you are, we've been doing great work with our strategy that we're embedding. And so that's been really sort of, fulfilling, and really sort of like a full-time job is what it is. So I took on my 8 clients outside of my job. So I was doing mornings and evenings around my kind of core working hours, and then figuring out the little bits alongside of that. And I think for me, boundaries has to be the first thing. I communicated openly to my very supportive manager and colleagues to say, I'm working on this. Here are my boundaries. It will never eat into my work time. I am committed during this time to make sure I continue to deliver at the high standard that I do and that you expect of me. And then outside of that, I sort of communicated openly with my friends and the people around me to say, this is going to be a focus for a while. I'm not going to be as available as I did, but because I have great friends and great supportive people around me, they were like, we know that you'll be great at this. Go ahead and do it. Let us know how we can cheer you on and support you with that. So as a side note, that's why it's important to pick the right people to have around you. But it was absolutely like a real juggle for some time. And I did need to lean on a couple of people. And I also needed to tell myself when it was too much. There was definitely a time when it was almost every morning and evening, apart from sort of, the end of Friday and the beginning of Monday. And that was really fulfilling because it's something I love to do. And my clients were getting great results. And that's just, as you know, that is something that really spurs you on when you think, oh, yes, this is really working and someone's seeing great value from this. But always you have to have that kind of inner, it's almost like a temperature check or a Nando's scale where you go, how spicy is this feeling at the moment? And so checking in with that, I was a bit like, okay, 8 is a bit too much for me right now, on top of what is also happening in, the day job and managing my energy around that. And so I decided that that's probably too much. Let's scale it back the next time I open up the doors. And so I have found a nice, much more sort of happy medium with that, and the clients that I'm working with at the moment. So yeah, I think it's like no one ever gets it right. We just have to try. And I think we also have to have that inner temperature. Like, I know that there are some people who said to me when I was in that place, some of my friends were like, I could never, that is way too much for me. But I know that if we bring in the Yerkes-Dodson stress curve, I know that my optimal functioning is like with a little bit more stress, because that's when I'm most engaged. And so it was helpful for that. I was really energized by it and it wasn't a drainer. But as soon as you get more into that, you tip into a different territory. That's when your sort of your inner temperature checker has to go, okay, what would be a better number? Or like, how would you like to manage your energy differently? So, again, with a coaching mindset, it's almost like coaching yourself. It's like, okay, well, how does that feel? Where is the limit for you there? And what does that look like? So I guess it's kind of using some of those techniques on myself as well.
Yeah. And it also sounds like, and this is making an assumption, right? So I'm very aware of that, and putting words into your mouth. But similar to the conversation I had with Martin around the importance of having a vision. Your vision was to get your ICF and to be a certified coach. And so you don't mind working harder for that period of time. Once you achieve that, you can then reflect, I've done this. Now what do I want this to look like in this world?
Exactly.
You can sustain that performance for a period of time if you can see the end date or the end goal.
And I think it's, like I said, it's also the value that you add. I think that when you train to be a coach, you begin to see things differently. One, you're definitely more reflective as a person. I'm already quite a reflective person, but this was like almost like someone to give me new tools. And I went, oh, that's so exciting. How do I do that? So I think you also bring it into your day-to-day life, but you also bring it into my full-time job as well. So to the day job, you have more meaningful conversations, because actually you're really thinking about, what am I asking this person? And am I asking close questions? You begin to have more of an awareness, I think, of what having meaningful conversations. So I think absolutely it was having clients see the results and moving through something that is self-development is exciting to me. But there is that, again, that has a fine balance, because I'm constantly sort of like, oh, that sounds interesting, let me do that. But that's also a double-edged sword as well.
Yeah. I definitely feel that now with that, as you said, reflecting, you reflect a lot more if you are process driven as well. You have hard times where you do that, but you also go, in my conversations, probably you would have seen on the podcast, is, oh, look, I'm making an assumption. I know this is not, you begin to know what you're going to say. This is an assumption. I know this is not fact, so I'm just going to give you that warning. This is an insight, and you just begin to change your language around it as well. Anyway, look, let's start with a big question. What actually makes work meaningful, and how do you define that?
I think it is a big question. And I think, it's an individual thing. But I think that we've already talked a little bit about that human value piece and what's meaningful for people. I think as our organizations move forward, we can't forget that having a purpose and having meaning is actually a core part of our health and well-being. There is like an innate human need to know that the thing that you get out of bed for every day is worth your time. And I do think when job markets are squeezed and there is change, it can feel really difficult to find those things. And so I think that it's important that we all reflect on what is meaningful for us at work. But to generally group those things, I think it is what gets you out of bed in the morning. What is it about the work that you do that is exciting to you? But it's also, I don't want to say, we could say human value as a big bracket of things, and we could go straight into the kind of like, yeah, let's all get to the office and it's all being together. But actually that is different for everybody. There are certain people, like I'm neurodivergent, I'm an autistic person, which means that sometimes working from home is a better option for me because there's lots happening in the office and I can't focus. And so actually there isn't one answer that says, here's how we deliver human value in today's workplace, and that's why it should be meaningful to everybody, because we all have to find our own connection, our own sense of belonging to the work that we do and the environments that we're a part of as well. Like, I'm giving an office example, but there are people that work in our communities, in our schools, people that have multiple jobs. There is, I think what makes work meaningful is individual and has to connect to what you value in your life. And that can also change over time. No one starts in the workplace when they're like 21, 22 and says, this is what's meaningful to me, and maintain that for their whole career, because that changes all the time. A classic example might be, new parents who have a new reflection that says, actually, my family, that is totally changed perspective, and I have to be home at this time because they're more important than anything else. Whereas before that, you might have said, I don't mind working a little bit longer. I don't mind having 2 jobs because actually that's what really fills my cup up. That's meaningful for me. But that will change over time. So I think it's not a stationary thing. It's not a linear thing. And it is deeply individual to a person. So I think we all need to kind of ask ourselves that question too.
And what is that question?
I don't want to say great question, but I mean, I think it is. It's a series of questions like, what feels exciting to me in my day to day, or what feels exciting in my job? Where do I feel like my skills are being used? What do I find challenging? How important is challenge to me? If I drew my life as a pie chart, what would be in my pie chart?
I love that question.
Because I think when we start to act, and also drawing things, again, everybody's a different learner, but if you're drawing out with my life as a pie chart, what's in my pie chart? And what portion of that pie chart does it take up? How much airtime does this thing get for me? Because like I said, for some people it could be family, for some people it could be my coaching, for some people it could be something else entirely. Or and it changes. Sport. It could be that I have a full-time job, but actually I'm part of a professional sports team, and that gives me meaning, and I love the community that I'm a part of. So I think I'd probably encourage people to start there and ask yourself, I suppose they're reflective questions. What excites me? What do I find challenging? How important are those elements to me? If I was to draw something down, what's the first word that comes to mind? Those types of questions.
Yeah. And reflective questions. I can see that. The ones I have, which I usually work with clients on, is what's important to me? What must my day have? Or what must my week have? And what do I enjoy?
One of the most interesting exercises that I really loved when it was introduced to me was the DeMartini 30 value questions. Have you used them before?
No.
So DeMartini was he's written a book certainly about this, but they are sort of 30, I think they're around 30, 25 to 30 questions where it's essentially the beginning of a sentence and you have to finish it immediately with the first thing that comes to mind. And it helps you identify what your values are. If you are a coaching client of mine and values work is what you want to do, we will probably do this together, or it will be homework for you to do. But it's because it accesses that subconscious response of like, and the way that he's designed the questions enables that to be surfaced. And so it's really interesting. A lot of people are very surprised as to what they write down or how they finish that sentence when they do it, when they fill it out. And the point is to do it quickly. It's like that Friends episode, if you've ever seen it, which route should we take, when Phoebe's asking Joey. It's exactly that, because it's to do with what is the first thing comes to mind. And through that, there is like you can identify the different themes and what's important to you. So instead of, because sometimes when you ask, you might have experiences with your clients too. You ask somebody what's important to you. I've had people go, I don't even know. I don't even know what that means, because I've become something, I've spent so long in this career and I've ended up doing this thing and I'm actually not sure if that's what I want to do anymore. And I don't know what's important to me, or that's changed so much, or I don't know, let's say a life change as well. You find yourself somewhere you didn't expect to. Asking that question can actually be quite hard to dismantle sometimes. So I think an exercise like the DeMartini worksheet that I use with my clients, or breaking it down into individual questions, feels a bit more accessible sometimes.
Yeah, I love that, and that is there, and I'm going to do that at some point, because I spent a long time, not more, especially around values, trying to understand what my values are, and I think I've got it, but actually be interesting to see if it creates a different awareness for me. But yeah, no, that's a really great one. Thank you.
I also really like to, sorry if I may, just briefly, I've done quite a bit of values work for myself, and what I quite like to do is make sure that they're very clearly written down, so that I can revisit them over time and see what is a constant and see what changes, and kind of tie them into different life stages, or what's happened in my life, or the pattern of things. Because even if our values change ever so slightly, doesn't mean that we're a different person. So I think that it's important to kind of always have that wider view as well, even if you are reflecting on what your values might be 3 years later than when you asked yourself those questions before.
Yeah, a constant reflection on those. I do it every year. I'm always reflecting, but that's because I'm a coach, right? And
same.
sometimes we do as we say. When someone comes to you saying, my work doesn't feel meaningful anymore, what's usually missing, do you think?
I think it depends. There's what I've seen in my clients certainly is different stages of life. Like I said, I found people, I've had some clients later on in their life thinking, actually, where I am now is preparing for retirement. I'm at the other, I found like I've had so much value in the time that I've spent in the workplace, but actually now I really want to focus on traveling, because I realized I've spent so much time doing that. Or, my child is going to university or is now at university, and I would like to make sure that I have time with them. And that's a change in values. I think it very much depends on life stage, is certainly what I've seen. I think we'll probably do a lot of that kind of values. Okay, well, like what is it that feels important now? And I also will typically look at what feels challenging about it, because I think when someone feels, how unsettled are you by it not being meaningful? Because sometimes a job is just a job to some people, and that's how they want to see it, because there is something else in their life that's so much more important than what they do as a job. Equally fair and valid. But I think that equally on the other end of the spectrum, I've had people who their job has been their whole life, and they think, oh my God, who am I now? That's more of a question of identity rather than it is the meaning of my job. Sometimes it is actually not just meaning in your job, it's what is the meaning of your job in your pie chart of life. And so I think that's normally where it starts, is like, okay, let's start here and take a little step back and say, what is the role of your job in your life? And then we get into kind of the why that might be the case, or how that has been viewed so far. And then I think you can move into more of an alignment type place, because I think when people understand what the role of their job is for them, it's better to start there than trying to find meaning and alignment for that person. Because actually, if you haven't identified why the job itself is important to them, you're kind of looking at quite a small pool. Whereas if we get people to really think about actually what is it, because, and then classically with coaching, someone might actually realize it's something totally different on the side that actually is changing their view of it as well. So that's typically what the types of things we would probably look at in that kind of question. Because, and again, it's an overwhelming question. If you find yourself in a place that you don't recognize anymore, that feels fundamentally sort of disarming to a lot of people, particularly if your job has played a pretty major role in your life. So yeah, it's slightly different for everybody. And I've seen lots of different things, pretending about life stage or when values have shifted and somebody isn't comfortable with the fact that might happen. Again, neurodiversity can play a role in that. Certainly I can say from an autistic perspective that certainty and regularity and routine and black and white things is very helpful if your brain is structured that way. So it can be really challenging for some people when it's like, oh my God, what is this? How do I do with this? Does that give you a bit of an insight?
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the things which I see as a coach when I get, because I'm listening and going, oh, I've definitely felt this before. And I get scared when we talk about meaning, and maybe especially when people maybe aren't connected to that meaningful work or meaning, or I don't know what it is, just that connection to what they're doing. I find it really uncomfortable a little bit in regards to like when change is involved, and potentially they're talking about change, but like you're coaching them and you're seeing them making a change, but there's such a risk in that change as well. I find that's quite an uncomfortable situation as a coach.
I think also sometimes when people can't find the words to identify the thing, we shift more into like, what is the emotion?
Yeah.
What is the feeling that's coming up for you right now? And once we move less out of the kind of objective language that we're attaching to something, it's like, if we just talked purely in feelings, what does it feel like when you do this? Or what does it feel like when you think about this? And then what's normally your response when you feel like this? And you can move into actually a different frame of communication around something without, because I think sometimes when we put labels to things or we use words, people will already have an association with that word. So I think sometimes if that feels challenging to that person, I'll shift more into what does it feel like? And we'll talk more about
feeling,
language.
Yeah. The emotional response. Do you think that we're talking about meaningful work quite a lot? Do you think it's hard to talk about meaningful work without a person understanding? We use the word value, so that's obviously there, but maybe a little bit of identity, maybe a little bit of actual personal meaning as well. And so we talk about meaningful work without understanding our identity or what like ideal identity, because I feel like that's probably something different to our personal identity, that it's hard to then think about what meaningful work is.
Yeah, I think this is also kind of creeping into the territory of belonging and representation as well. And like you said, there's you just mentioned there kind of more of the aspirational self. And there is also how we view ourselves and how others view us. That's another thing. If you've got a lot of limiting beliefs about yourself, your view of what meaningful is, or how much meaning you deliver in your job as well, can be viewed very differently by those around you. And that's also part of, perhaps a coaching exercise is by this time next week, go and find 3 things that your colleagues would say about you. And that can also change meaning. But yeah, I think the belonging piece is important. And that creeps into how do I see myself in the context of this organization or this community? That is absolutely an important element of this conversation too.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out where because it then becomes a very big thing, right?
Yeah. But this is the thing of coaching, is that the role of the coach is to be able to take up those kind of conversations and handle them very gently and take them step by step, because often I find people come to coaching with very, very big questions and they are very difficult to break down. That's not it's not like somebody could come into coaching and be like, what is meaningful about my work, or how do I make my workplace meaningful? That's usually not the question you end up answering, because it's too big to tackle in one session. But what you'll probably look at is like, okay, let's talk a bit about what you do enjoy here, or like what is, and you have to break it down, because it's just such a huge topic.
Yeah. And I also think, I don't know what you're like here, but staying biased free and opinion free is then quite difficult as well in those situations.
Well, yeah, I think that's a difficulty of, particularly if you, as a person, has an affinity with a client, whether you're the same age or you come from a similar background, your brain is built in a similar way. That's natural for human beings to have that level of affinity. But I think that it is very important ethically, obviously, for the coach to remain in that kind of bias-free, neutral kind of position to be in service to your client. That is the role of the coach. But I do think that's where mentorship plays an important role. And occasionally in my practice, because I'm EMCC globally accredited, which is European Mentoring and Coaching Council, I do introduce sometimes a little bit of mentoring if it is someone who is specifically asking me for that. So for example, if you do share a certain affinity with a client and they say, could we talk about this particular thing? And they've asked for your sort of opinion of it. What I will always ask my clients is, if you would like to have more of a mentorship session, let me know in advance if you would like to do that next week. And then we can build the session around that. And I'll put my mentor hat on, and I still weave in a little bit of the coaching element, because that's a very important way of supporting that person through that. But you might share more insights, you might share more of that. But I do that in quite a structured way, because I do believe the role of the coach is to facilitate that thinking process. And I do think it's quite important to delineate between the two. Yeah. But yeah, sometimes you have a conversation with someone, and especially if you're an empathetic person, and my full-time day job is delivering on a well-being strategy. And so sometimes, and I'm level 3 RSPH, mental health accredited, like all of those things, I'm very well equipped to sit with someone who's having a difficult day. But the approach when I'm coaching somebody, it's very different than if I was sitting in a workplace with somebody who required support. And that, for me, in my specific circumstance, can be challenging sometimes if someone is presenting something and you want to leap in and sort of really wrap your arms around them in the way that you would in my day-to-day job, obviously within professional boundaries. But like, it's different when you're in a coaching role. But again, it's all interwoven. My clients are sort of held in carefully with their mental health, with their vulnerability that they bring to coaching, because me as a coach, that's my unique offering, is that I have spent 8 years in the sort of well-being and mental health in particular type of role in organizations. And so I've spent a lot of time thinking about that. And so my coaching practice is very much that, a safe, held space. And that is feedback I get from my clients, is that when things felt difficult or someone had a real insight, it was safe to do that. And it was safe for them to bring emotion. It was safe for them to feel very emotionally moved by something. And that's very welcome in that space. So I think for me, that is the challenge of like where I have to really be careful of that boundary, because I'm so used to being let's enable you to get the right kind of resource that you need. I mean, you do that in coaching, obviously, ethically, but it's a different type of conversation when you're a coach.
Yeah. I can see that from your kind of space as a mental health specialist as well, right? I want to take this into the workplace just to give this a little bit more, organizational kind of standpoint. I think we've covered the importance of meaningful work a little bit from an individual standpoint. Probably a lot more we could deep dive.
Yeah.
But as we've only got 20 minutes, after 20 minutes, I think let's move into the organizational standpoint.
That's gone fast. But yes, this is the other side. The other hat is the employer side. It's sort of how do we make work meaningful for the people inside our organizations?
Yes. Great question. So let's answer that question for me.
They love it when we do that. I do think that a large, my university thesis back in the day was about how you develop organizational culture with a view of entrepreneurial orientation, which is basically a fancy word for how do we get people to think innovatively and with an entrepreneurial view in a larger setting. But how you do that using internal marketing. So I absolutely love this. It was amazing because it was fascinating to me that organizations can create belonging and meaning and value sets by what is essentially internal marketing. Now, in practice, this is things like your employee value propositions. This is also your external marketing as well. But it's also some organizations, will have like charters. They've got their North Star. They've got their sets of values. And all those things are actually really important to the people inside your organizations. There are organizations out there that think that they are less important than other things or the work that you actually do. But I think that that is kind of like a guide for the people inside your organizations. And, again, as human beings, we naturally want to be a part of a community, be a part of something meaningful. And like I said earlier, that kind of purpose and meaning is central to our well-being and our health as a population. So when organizations really focus on enabling people to answer the question of what is it that my company does? Why is that important to me? And how do we create value together? When you're able to answer those questions about your organization, it says a lot about the environment that's been created for you. And also, I think it was a couple of years ago, I saw Bruce Daisley speak, and he was talking about your levels of engagement and productivity if you have a work best friend. And so it's a lot of the things around like the relationships that we have and how those relationships are enabled to be created. So I've worked again in workplaces and actually started and enabled a lot of these things as well, like different clubs for different interests. That could be employee resource groups or affinity networks or something that brings you together, not only to see like, your tribe, your people, whatever you want to call that, inside your organization, but also by association. That's like my workplace has enabled that for me. Back earlier in my career, when I was working at Bulb, the renewable energy provider, we would do, we had a really engaged workforce that were absolutely the eco warriors of this planet. And we did a lot of amazing things like volunteering days, planting trees. We did, we used to do a regular clothes swap event, which was obviously all about sustainable living. We did craft workshops, things like that, because it was that is not necessarily the kind of thing that I would do in my workplace now, because it's associated with why this organization is important, and it spoke to the people inside the organization. And often, especially, if I'm involved, it's peer led as well. That doesn't, we've talked a bit about internal marketing, and yes, that is kind of like the North Star, the mission statement, the vision of where we want to go, but it is also how it's enabled by the people inside the organization. So, for example, just using some of those Bulb examples, we had people who did a lot of crochet, or one of them was like macrame, not how sure how to say that, but the plant hangers and the weaving stuff. And they were like, oh, this is great because I've got all this recycled rope from this thing, and I wondered if anybody wanted to do that with me. And it absolutely created this sense of like, people were excited. They came into the office that day because they thought, oh, at lunchtime I'm going to do this. And like, those types of things really matter because they create a sense of belonging. They create a sense of community. But if they are aligned to the type of organization you are, it does create engaged workforces. It does create this connection to, oh, I'm so like, that person, for example, is going to a party on the weekend and saying, oh, I actually love my job because, I get to go to work and we get to do these things every day. Or, I'm saving the planet because I work at an organization that is a B corporation and saves the world.
Yeah.
But equally, if you work in the legal sector, it could be, I'm really proud to be a lawyer here because actually what I do is deliver justice every day, and I make sure, or, I do some pro bono hours, which my job allows me to do, and that's really important to me. So yeah, there's a lot to say about how we structure that inside an organization, and there's so many ways to unlock it, I think.
Yeah, I remember listening to Alice Ferguson's book, and there's a bit in there, I think there's two examples, one which is like if you ask the janitor why they come to work, and his answer and response was because I'm here to help Man United win the league. It's that connection to what the goal of the organization is, right? But I think there's another one which is like they were building the Colosseum maybe, and they asked one of the workers. I'm giving this example terribly, but this kind of concept. Why do you come to work? Well, I'm creating a Colosseum. It's actually the connection to the purpose or the thing that the company's doing, which I think is great. The other thing here, which was really standing out to me, is like the role of the team in this. In a large organization, like yes, having a clearly connected line to the company's purpose, but also a connected line and belonging to the team that you're in. And so I think there's a big element there of like, are you a connected team? Are you creating connection? Are you creating fun and enjoyment? Are you bringing the team together to do that for the individuals in your team as well? I remember I've not been employed ever really, but when I look back at my time as a personal trainer, we were all self-employed, but there was a team of us. We made sure we had fun because we were that kind of group, and so there was always laughter. There's always that there as well. It's why I enjoyed going to work.
Yeah, I think there is. I really like I actually don't know who coined this term, so credit to them, whoever it is, and I will find out who it is. But the idea of there's this thing called your totem, which is obviously related to the term totem pole, but it's what you gather around. And there are different things in workplaces that people gather around. And so like such a classic example of this is like if you have snacks in your team, that is a place that you gather around just for your team. And it is often the place, it is the water cooler moment, it is the coffee moment. But there is what you gather around and what you share as a team and how you build that and nurture that together is so important and cannot be overlooked. You know, everybody knows the phrase, you don't leave a job, you leave like a manager or the team or the people around you. It's always about the relationships around you. And even if you believe deeply in the organization's purpose, if your day-to-day experience is challenging because the people you're working with is hard, you will leave that job, or you will vote with your feet, you will walk away. And I think however you choose to nurture those, and it is leadership, it's the leadership of that team, but it's also what energy you're bringing into that. What energy are you bringing into the day-to-day? I actually ask my coaching clients sometimes that, but I also sort of check in with my colleagues in the same way, sort of like, hey, how are you doing today? And, or noticing a shift in somebody. I think that this is a really important thing that most people forget to do, is if you're working with people day in, day out, and you've noticed a shift in somebody, ask that person and share your observation with them. It might be nothing, but I think when we say to people, oh, how are you, is we're relying on asking that question and the response to then have that conversation, but actually leading with hey, I've noticed that you've come in a little bit less, or you've not come in the usual days that you would, or that you actually, you've been a little bit more detached lately. Is everything okay? Because what that interaction says is, I care about you. And it's just with that, but it's those types of things in the way that we build relationships together is so foundational to that kind of belonging, purpose, meaning. The purpose, I think, often comes from the organization, but I think the meaning and the belonging really comes from what sort of value you are creating for everybody in that team every day.
Yeah, and they're so interconnected, aren't they? From the self and the organization. And the sweet spot is the connecting the two, right? And I'm guessing the self-determination theory.
I do, but please, by all means, bring it in.
It's the three columns of kind of motivation ultimately, and it's autonomy, competency, and relatedness. And for so long, I used to think that purpose and meaning was separate, but the more I coach, the more I see relatedness is the relatedness to purpose, to team, to belonging, to connection, and where we fit to those things and how we connect to those things as well. And I'm just hearing that through both of those things. Are we connected to our meaning, to our purpose, to our mission, to the team? I think that's a huge part to this meaning. What makes work meaningful ultimately?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we've picked a very meaty subject for today, and there's so many different parts to it, and it can be so individual. But I hope that so far we've given people at least a good few elements to reflect on, either for yourself, or if you're a leader in an organization, or a team leader, or someone who, if you're someone who brings the vibe to work every day and you're the person who likes to check in with people, then absolutely, like, what can we bring to our workplaces to create that meaning, or co-create that meaning with our colleagues?
I got a question for you. If your values don't align, I have a question. I'm the podcast host, so I have got a question. I don't know what I said.
I was like, go on, please.
I thought I was in a chat there. If your values don't align to your organization, or you feel like you aren't connected to your organization, do you think you can overcome that, or you can change that? Or do you think that the best thing to do is to vote with your feet, as you said?
A difficult place to be. One, I'd probably start with the pie chart. I'd be like, okay, and what is the role? How important is that for you in the grand scheme of everything that's important to you? But then I'd probably think about, because I think sometimes it's very easy to be like, oh, no, don't like it at all. Be other ways of connecting with it. And also sometimes you don't always have the privilege of voting with your feet, particularly in the market right now. It is challenging to change jobs. It isn't as easy as it has been before. So sometimes I think, depending on an individual's circumstances, which is definitely the most important place to start, because if it's not that you can change jobs, it might be that is what you want. You've reflected on it a lot, and that's fine, absolutely, by all means. But I do think, before anybody votes with their feet, it is, let's take a real close look at, one, the importance of this in the factor of the whole pie chart, but two, what is it, the values? For example, like, if you work in an organization that you think, this is challenging to me because I don't necessarily align with the purpose of the let's say the mission statement or the values, but the thing I really love is the people around me, and the fact that this is a well-paid job, or I've got great benefits, or I've got a condition and this healthcare plan is really supporting me. There is value to be gained from that role still. And again, that's why we start with the zoom out and the overall view of the importance of this, and let's look at every element of that, because there can be, it's not just as black and white as the values of this organization. I don't like it, I want to be somewhere else. It's, I'm sure many people on the planet would go and work for, a net zero B Corp that is saving lives and the planet. I'm sure that we'd all be able to align our values to that. But there is the reality of, what is important to me right now? What are my, because one of your values might be family. It might be that healthcare policy actually caters better for your family than any job you've ever had does. So I think I would invite people probably to zoom out a little bit more and think about, where do you get the value from, and how much does that weigh in on that conversation? Because actually you might do that and go, I still don't like it, and I can find there's something else that's better out there. Then by all means find that alignment for yourself. But I think it's, especially when things feel challenging, people can go, my values are not aligned and I don't like it anymore. But there's still value to be gained. Does that make sense?
I like flipping the value question on its head. Not what are my values, but what's the value of work to me?
Yeah.
What am I getting? I think it's important. Is it giving me the self-development that I need? Am I getting the opportunity to do these things which I couldn't do beforehand? Blah, 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 right? So I think I really like that reframe of what's the value of work to me. Yeah. Because that might help you stay there, and actually that in the end could switch your motivation and your effort or output.
Yeah. And also, what's the end goal? Like, describe your, like, I love doing the ideal day exercise. Like, if there was absolutely challenges, no limitations to what you could live your day-to-day life like, what would it look like if you could live your perfect day? And when you ask people to dream that big, sometimes they go, oh my God, it's this. And they see that is a reframe in itself sometimes. And so actually, when you do that kind of exercise, you view the value to be gained differently sometimes, because it could be that, my ultimate goal is to be self-employed and totally in control of my calendar. And then you might view this as like, okay, well, this is a really great stepping stone because I'm exposed to X clients, or like, there could be many examples of that. But I think when you focus on, if you're thinking about that process of, does this align with my values, and what is the value I can get from this role, I'd also bring in the where do I want to be, and what would my ideal situation be, and work backwards from there, because that will also play a role in how you view these things, or the mindset through which you're viewing that question of value.
Yeah. I also want to, if you're listening to this, I also want to find out how many of you actually put work into that perfect ideal day.
Yeah.
I can't imagine many people going, I want to work. I want to spend 8 hours at work.
Exactly. And I think that maybe that's the key piece of homework from this podcast, or if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on LinkedIn, what is your perfect day? And what are the main themes of that? Is it, I don't know, I wake up and I go to the gym? Is it I wake up and I have a coffee in bed for an hour? Or like I read my book? Or I go to work? Or like I start my work really early and I finish at 2:00 and then I spend the afternoon with my children? That is absolutely a scenario. And I do think there are people, it's the same as when you ask people, what would you do if you win the lottery? Would you still work? And how many times have we asked somebody that question? Or had someone ask us that question? And that essentially is asking you, what is the role of your work in your life, and how important is that to you? And I think my answer to that has always been, I would definitely still like to have a job, but I'd probably spend more time learning, because if I could really, if money wasn't, if we didn't live in a capitalist society and we all had to have jobs, I would probably spend my time learning lots of different skills. That it would probably be how I would spend my time, but I'd still need a way of implementing those things. So I think I'd probably still have a job like I do now. Yeah. But that's also alignment. If you end up in that place, I think that's saying you're probably in the right job.
I think that's a really good, a great practical tip to be efficient. Do you know what mine would be? I think something to do with speaking to people.
Yeah.
Kind of probably a little bit more speaking than asking questions. So I always see like myself on a stage somewhere, my ego is coming into play.
Nice.
And then also just having fun. Like my number one value in life is to have fun. And so saying when you're having fun and it's relaxed, and then there's a little bit of work.
I would also, maybe we should just do this forever. I also think that's an interesting one. Like having fun is something people always talk about as, something that we should always remind ourselves to do, because, we work to live, not live to work. But how many people in their ideal scenario had put that as kind of like I'm going to get up today and I'm going to have fun. That's going to be my main purpose. I would love to know how that features, or if it's a retrospective sort of like, am I waking up to obligations, or am I waking up to a life I want to live? So anyway, we're getting very existential here. So maybe.
Look, I have one last question for you.
Okay.
Jay, I'm flipped between the two. There's two questions. One around like, what can an organization do now just to help bring meaning to work? I'm just going with that one because I think we've covered the individual, especially in the last bit. What can an organization or team do to bring meaning to work tomorrow? Let's say like first steps.
At team level, I would say find something for you to gather around, whether that is like a snack or a team meeting, have a cup of tea, put all of your work things aside and go around and ask that question of what excites you about coming to work every day. And seeing, because then once you have those questions, it's more like we're co-creating meaning between us, because individually everybody will know what that means to them, but actually what are we all showing up for together is an important question to answer. And I'd say at an organizational level, again, that has to also be co-created, but it's how do you bring, for an organizational level, it's a bit harder because that's a lot bigger, but it's probably how do you enable people to connect themselves to this purpose? How would you like people to answer that question of my role as I work in the post room of a consultancy firm. Why do I show up every day? Or like, what's important to me? Because the value of that organization might be collaboration. And that person might say, I get to work with so many different people every day. And I love the diversity of my job. That is being connected to organizational purpose, even if you're not the CEO. So I think it's probably about how, as an organization, it's how you enable people to connect to that and let the people inside your organization decide as well and lead some of that also.
Yeah, I love that. Catherine, can you just share where people can find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Catherine Ritchie. I also have a website, catherineritchie.com. If you're interested in coaching with me, you can put a little request in there or send me a DM on LinkedIn. I am on no other parts of the internet because I have boundaries. And I also find it hard to maintain other social medias with 2 jobs. So, and I'm more about quality rather than quantity. So my LinkedIn door is very much open. And you can drop me a little email via my website, catherineritchie.com.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you, Ryan D. Sorry, I was going to try to get you in there, but we were getting close to time. And somebody else who I can't see who it is. Can you see who that is?
It says LinkedIn user said, that
Yes.
sounds great. Count me in. Well, we're glad you're with us, LinkedIn user, and thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you could see it or not, but I appreciate you all for joining. Keep your eye out. I've got Rich Caseman on next week talking about making positive lifestyle change through coaching. So another one very similar to this, I think. Catherine, stay where you are. Everybody else, I will see you all soon. Thank you for joining. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.